Good morning, welcome to CATEX TV. My name is Frank Fortunato. Today is Friday, October 12, 2012. In news released just this morning, JP Chase announced huge profits, far in excess of what analysts had been expecting. Jamie Dimon, the CEO, said most of the profits were due to releases of reserves that the bank had escrowed in anticipation of mortgage losses. He said that the housing market has hit bottom and is in fact going back up. Also in Syria today, since it's Friday, there was another bombing. This was in the central square, Umayyad Square. 2 bombings apparently near military buildings. No word yet on the number of casualties. Meanwhile, interestingly enough, the European Union has been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for its efforts to promote peace and democracy in Europe. This is occurring in the midst of the continent's biggest crisis since the Second World War. The Norwegian committee that awards the Nobel said that the EU's contributions over the past 60 years to the advancement of peace and reconciliation, democracy, and human rights in Europe are deserving of the award. It is important to remember that in 1945, a war that cost the lives of about 30 million people ended. Only 5 years later, the French and the Germans were cooperating in the European steel and coal community, the seeds of the European Union. British insurers want regulators to appoint more senior figures with industry experience to correct what they see as an overwhelming preoccupation with the banking sector. We've been talking about this for some time. The government of David Cameron is reorganizing the financial regulatory sector in Britain and is collapsing the the Financial Services Authority into 2 distinct boards, the Financial Conduct Authority and the Prudential Regulation Authority, part of the Bank of England. Insurers say that the British government's neglect of the insurance sector is also reflected in its failure, the government's failure, to have a decisive influence over the Solvency II composition, which are expected to usher in very strict requirements for the insurance industry. Bronek Masojeda, the chief executive for Hiscox, a very highly respected man, said the naughty child is getting all the attention. The bankers got it so wrong that it is all anyone can think of at the moment. He said the view of the insurance sector is that if the organization, meaning the regulatory organization, is run by a small number of people who are just central bankers and economists, then yet again it will be banking über alles, banking over all. The Financial Services Authority denied that insurers were being overlooked. However, last evening in a speech at the Mansion House in London, Lord Adair Turner, who was the outgoing UK Financial Services Authority chairman, gave high praise to Lloyd's and the London insurance market for playing no part in the financial crisis. At the same time, he lambasted the banking sector for having been a failed system that wreaked havoc on the UK and the global economy. Partner Re said that it expects to take an after-tax charge of about $63 million related to losses in its North American agriculture portfolio, largely as a result of the drought. Earlier, AWACS, Allied World, had said that they will take about a $40 million hit. Insurance Insider is reporting that JLT Director Simon Rabinet is leaving JLT. He is a FAC expert, facultative reinsurance. Sources suggest that he may be joining Arthur J. Gallagher's London operations. Neither Gallagher or JLT had any comment. The New York Times has an excellent story today in which it quotes Leon Panetta in a speech yesterday, the Defense Secretary of the U.S., saying that the United States was facing the possibility of a cyber Pearl Harbor and was increasingly vulnerable to foreign computer hackers who could dismantle the nation's power grid, the transportation system, financial networks, and the government. Mr. Panetta said that he was reacting to increased aggressiveness and technical sophistication of countries such as China, Russia, Iran, and other militant groups. Panetta said an aggressor or extremist group could use these kinds of cyber tools to gain control of critical switches. They could derail passenger trains, or even more dangerous, derail passenger trains loaded with lethal chemicals. I didn't know there were passenger trains loaded with lethal chemicals, but his point's well taken. He said terrorists could contaminate the water supply in major cities or shut down the power grid across large parts of the country. He cited an attack in August against Saudi Aramco, the oil company, which rendered useless more than 30,000 computers. The administration has put forth a cybersecurity bill that would force businesses to shape up their cyber efforts and make sure that they're impenetrable. The bill has been stalled in the Congress, who say that the bill is too burdensome for U.S. corporations, a view endorsed by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Meanwhile, in Japan, the utility behind the nuclear disaster acknowledged for the first time today that it could have avoided the crisis. Tokyo Electric Power Company said in a statement that it had known safety improvements were needed at the Fukushima plant before last year's tsunami triggered 3 meltdowns there, but it had feared the political, economic, and legal consequences of implementing those changes. In a statement that they released, they said, when looking back now on the accident, the problem was that preparations were not made in advance. Could necessary measures have been taken with previous tsunami evacuations? Yes. According to the report that was issued, TEPCO had feared that efforts to better protect nuclear facilities from severe accidents like tsunamis would trigger anti-nuclear sentiment, interfere with operations, or increase litigation risks. Well, I bet they wish they had that one back. Meanwhile, in Nigeria, the Nigerian President Jonathan Goodluck has visited areas now that have seen the worst flooding in over 50 years. Over 140 people have been killed. Some 700,000 people have been forced to evacuate. Vast stretches of the country have been submerged by floods in recent weeks. There were 2 seismic events in the past 18 hours of some note. There was a 5.5 earthquake just outside of Santiago, Chile, yesterday afternoon. Caused the swaying of office buildings and people rushing out to the streets. No reports of any damage or injuries. And this morning there was a big one, a 6.7, located in a remote area of Indonesia. No tsunami alert has been issued, and there does not seem to be any damage. That's the news for today. Have a pleasant weekend, and we will see you on Monday.